Liberty and we're singing and we're colored. Give me a high five.
What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and we got another one, James. I see Jake loved the intro. I can already tell. I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
already tell.
yeah,
We got
yeah,
another one. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. We love it. That's ours.
That's us right there. I love it. But as you can
Perfect.
tell, it is me and Big Game James. We are back for an extra episode. This is like the cherry on top for you guys
Right.
of Best of Enemies, and we brought some friends. We brought my guy Jake Arthur. He knows his Colts. We wanted a deep dive into the Colts. Both the Eagles and the Cowboys both play, alongside the other NFC East teams. We both play the Colts. We want to know what the heck is going to go on this year. We want to, we're excited for this. Felt this was the best guy to bring on, so we got my guy Jake. Jake, how's it going, man? Good to have you on.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Definitely. So he works for Locked On Podcast, does the Locked On Colts. I told them earlier he took our friend, he took our fan Giovanni. So it's a little bit different. Last year we were talking about Carson Wentz, but this year we're talking about a new quarterback, and we'll get into that. But before we get into all that, before we get into the it's certain players, I kind of like to ask a question, and that's, where are the Colts? Who are the Colts going into this offseason? Like, take me back before the draft, before the free agency happened, coming out of this season. Who were the Colts? What was their main concerns going into this offseason?
Well, going into this offseason was a lot of soul searching because I'm sure you guys noticed near the end of the year, the Colts were the team no one wanted to play. It looked like they could beat just about anyone. They had a really impressive resume. And then the last couple weeks hit, they had a COVID wave that went through the building starting week 16, I think. So it was the Cardinals, Raiders, and Jaguars the last three games. They managed to beat the Cardinals with just a patchwork roster, and then they totally collapsed the last 2 weeks and missed the playoffs. All they had to do was win one of the last two games against the Raiders, which is a winnable game, and the Jaguars, who were the worst team in the league, dropped them both. So that was a collapse that had really never been seen around here, like something of that magnitude, because they had expectations, they had this and that, and they had such a really good roster that was just dependent on a couple things that fell through. Quarterback play was one of them, but Wentz wasn't necessarily the only thing that went wrong there at the end. But they had a lot of figuring out to do. Were they going to go forward with the same quarterback? What kind of players do they need to bring in to make sure something like that collapse never happens again? They had some important free agents at big positions. They had to figure out left tackle. They needed to find a solution for their edge rusher issues. They had a lot of really important things to figure out, and luckily they've kind of answered at all of those, at least to some degree.
James, you could take it.
Yeah. So we obviously saw what happened with last year. With the what we can say collapse, losing to the
Mhm.
Jaguars. I know how probably that would have felt. But Carson Wentz has moved on. I'm looking at a lot of people in the comments, and then I kind of just curious as well. You had the Philip Rivers, and then you went to the Carson Wentz, and now you're at the Matt Ryan, who's at the tail end of his career, we can say. We know this is probably a stopgap. So, but how do you feel about Matt Ryan being the quarterback of the Colts? Do you think he has enough in him to get you to the playoffs? What do you think about his status and even the future and beyond with the quarterback position?
Yeah, there's a lot to be optimistic about with Matt Ryan. He's a really good fit with Frank Reich, because the perfect Frank Reich quarterback, first and foremost, is accurate, and that's kind of his biggest thing. Matt Ryan, he throws with a lot of timing, anticipation, and accuracy. Anytime we've asked Frank Reich about what he wants in a quarterback over these last 4 years, accuracy is pretty much always the first thing. Matt Ryan is also a really good leader. They wanted a strong leader in that position after the last year, and they're over the moon about what Ryan has showed them so far. During OTAs and workouts and stuff, the coaches can't be on the field yet with the players, and Ryan was basically an extension of the coaching staff. And another part that a lot of people don't really know to talk about yet is the Colts have a really young receiving core, lots of athletic raw skills. Uh, but those kind of guys need a quarterback, kind of a veteran quarterback, to help bring out the best in them and get to their potential. And the Colts really feel like Matt Ryan is the guy that can help those receivers get better and actually reach their potential and become more well-rounded players. So I'm really optimistic about that. I think Ryan can help pick up where they left off with Philip Rivers. Not to say last season was a lost season. It was a big disappointment at the end of it, even though they looked really good at times. But the progress they made having Philip Rivers there, get them to the playoffs. They should have beaten the Bills in the first round of the playoffs 2 years ago, and then to just totally fall off and miss the playoffs last year. It just was one step forward, two steps back. So having Matt Ryan hopefully is going to kind of give them those couple steps back that they had taken. Uh, Physically, he looks fine. I know the Falcons had a terrible season, and Ryan, being the face of the franchise, it kind of makes him look like he didn't have a good season, but it wasn't really the case. Julio Jones was gone. Calvin Ridley was gone for pretty much the whole year. His top receiver was a rookie tight end, and that's a position that's difficult to acclimate to as a rookie to begin with. So he was kind of working with an arm behind his back, but he made it work the best he could. But things are built a little better for him here in Indy moving forward. So the expectation, most of the moves they've made, the expectation shows that they want to make a deep playoff run and possibly the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and last year, shout out to everybody in the chat. First of all, I don't
Yeah,
know
shout
why
out to everybody.
Restream doesn't want to show the chat today.
I know it's
It
acting
took a
weird.
break.
I thought it was just me. I was looking at that like, is this me? Are we live? I'm looking at it, it
Yeah,
says
but
live.
we see you guys. We see you guys, and I do apologize. I don't know what's going on. But the question I want to ask is, like we were saying earlier before we got on, last year we were talking about Carson, and you talked about it, and this year we're talking about Matt Ryan. One thing that I heard last year that you just said again with Matt Ryan is that you guys are built a little bit better than the previous team that they came from, right? With the
Mhm.
Eagles, we had that porous offensive line, really no weapons for him on the offense to really go to. You can say the same thing about a Matt Ryan with the Falcons like you did. My question to you is, and maybe this is an unfair question, but do you think it was Carson Wentz? As an Eagles fan, that's kind of what they would. Do you think he was the reason you guys kind of had that collapse, or was it kind of really just a team thing? He was the scapegoat, easiest person to point the finger at. Is that? I don't want to put you into like a corner where you have to say something, but how do you feel about that?
Well, it is a bit of both. The last 2 weeks of the season was a group effort in them collapsing like that. All they had to do was win one of those two games. Week 18 against Jacksonville, it looked like no one even got off the bus. It was probably the worst football game I've ever seen played, at least by the Colts. It was embarrassing to be a part of, even just covering it. It was bad, and that's how every single person in the building felt as well. Um, as for the Raiders game the week before, they win that game, they go to the playoffs. Uh, Guys started to really decline in their performance then too, but I think just even a game from an average level quarterback would have won them that game despite their flaws. Carson just did not have it in that game. And most of the second half of the season, you could really see the Colts beginning to hide him. Jonathan Taylor got more and more involved, and Carson was less involved. There were times where you just needed one good completion on a third down, fourth quarter, or something, and you just couldn't. So kind of saying all that to get to this is Colts fans understand where Eagles fans were coming from when Carson went out the door. So
Yeah, that's what we
there's a lot
wanted.
of there's a lot of similar frustrations. Colts fans understand where Eagles fans were coming from on that.
Yeah, it's
That's
unfortunate.
interesting.
I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm bashing Carson Wentz anymore.
Mhm.
At least there was that period of time in my
Oh,
life where I had
I
to.
Hey,
I
it's
will
real
I
talk.
will
I mean,
say,
it's not bashing him. It's what really happened. This is
Yeah,
not a bashing of Carson Wentz thing.
mhm.
That's the reason why he got released. I mean, he came over to the Colts because they were like, hey, this dude still has talent. We saw what he did at Philadelphia. Maybe we can resurrect his career. This is a
Yeah.
time that he can show us that. And guess what? He had his opportunity. He was playing well, just like Jake said. But then toward
Hmm.
the end of the season, started having those same things that was happening in Philly. So yes,
Hmm.
this is on him. When those last two games, when they had time to get into the playoffs, he was one of the driving forces that could have got them there, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's why he
That's
got
facts.
released. So that's why we cannot sit there and say, "Oh, this is all this and this." It was
Hmm.
a lot of it was Carson Wentz not handling his
Hmm.
business at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I
Definitely.
don't want to say I don't want it to seem like it was all bad. There were definitely he had some outstanding
Yeah,
games, and there were some games they won because of how good he
right.
was. But
But
there, yeah, big but exactly. And a lot of people point to his stats from his stats on paper looked pretty good, but the inconsistency was just insane. Like there could be a game where he doesn't even reach 125 passing yards, and then he'll throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns the next week. Like you
Yeah.
cannot count on that week in. You have to know what you're getting to some degree,
mhm,
and you never knew quarter to quarter what you were getting with Carson. Second half of the season it kind of fell off. Most fourth quarters it fell off. I just understand why they felt they had to make the move. I agreed with trading for Carson Wentz when they did it. I
mhm.
thought it was a worthwhile risk that could work because bringing him back with Frank Reich, but by season's end they realized they got to move on, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, you guys helped us twice, right? You guys gave us the trade to
Right?
get rid of Carson, and then you guys fleeced Washington. In my opinion, I feel like you guys got the better
Yeah.
of that deal.
Yeah.
But go ahead,
Atlanta too.
Jay. Yeah, yeah, for the true, very true.
No, I was just I was going to ask, just before we I want to ask about some players, some draft picks, things of that nature. But I want to talk about your new defensive coordinator. Gus Bradley. It's going to be his first year.
Hmm.
Moving on from Eberflus, because Eberflus was with the Cowboys. Actually, he could have been our defensive coordinator. Things didn't happen that way. I liked him in Colts. I thought he was a good defensive coordinator. I liked him. I hoped he could have stayed in Dallas. Tell me what you think about the impact. Bradley's going to bring to the Colts defense, especially with the new addition of Stephen Gilmore coming over there now. What do you think is really going to add to this defense, and what do you really expect from this defense this year?
Yeah, so I agree. Eberflus was a really good defensive coordinator. The Colts defense was always pretty decent under him, but I think there was some probably areas for improvement that Gus Bradley should hopefully fill. One of them was pass rush was always pretty inconsistent. They would have okay numbers by season's end, but they would go whole games without hitting a quarterback, and that just can't happen. Uh, their young defensive ends that they would draft just wouldn't seem to develop very well. So pass rush, I think, is going to be a big thing that Bradley can help with, and that includes like how they line guys up. Like right now, Yannick Ngakwe and Kwity Paye should be the starting defensive ends, and we expect them to line up in the wide nine quite a bit more. So just lining them up farther outside the tackles, which will give them more time to kind of set them up and win those matchups. And under new defensive line coach Nate Ollie, it's supposed to be more of an attack front where, Pay, Buckner, Grover Stewart, and Ngakwe. There's less thinking, there's less setting things up. There's just go disrupt. So
Mhm.
that should be a big benefit for the defensive front. And the secondary, there should be more man defense. There was plenty of times there would be a third down, they were playing a soft zone, and it's like, the offense is gonna pick this up. Like you got to try and lock some guys down. So I think there will be more man coverage, some cover three things, so some more of that should be beneficial. They've got some nice young safeties that should work pretty well with. Julian Blackman's coming back from an Achilles, so we'll see how good he looks. He was a bright young safety before that happened, but again, we'll see. Nick Cross was a safety they're in love with, real explosive, athletic guy. He kind of becomes a starter now by default with Kari Willis retiring.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a guy that might shine pretty well in this new defense. But overall, the hope is better pass rush, better player development, especially from those pass rushers, and then just kind of seeing the coverage tighten up a bit. And you mentioned Stephon Gilmore, that should be pretty big because Carolina, that wasn't his best year last year, but he still was a pretty decent player when he was healthy.
Mhm.
Yeah. Very true,
Definitely.
very true. And
Yeah.
and you talk about the defense. I'm glad you brought that up. You not too long ago, I think it was like earlier this morning. You brought it up. I was kind of scrolling through your timeline. You were talking about the defensive tackles you got, and you were talking about having one of the better duos. Do you want to kind of talk to me? We all know who DeForest Buckner is, but I'm gonna be
Mm,
100% honest. The second guy you said, I was kind of new to him, so just kind of
yeah.
throw his name out there. Let me know what I should be expecting when the Eagles do go against them, because we got to make sure we know everything.
Right.
Yeah, no, so that's Grover Stewart, and Nick Sirianni knows all about Grover Stewart, so that he'll be part of the game plan. But no, Grover is basically the Colts nose tackle. They're a four-man front, but he plays the one tech. So whatever a nose tackle in that defensive front is, he is. He's a real big guy, well over 300 pounds, very athletic. He occupies a lot of blockers, but he's really, really strong. Really good run defender, but he will shrink the pocket and just kind of put pressure on the quarterback up front, which everyone knows that's a quarterback's least favorite thing. But really, his just dominant trait is his power and ability to occupy blockers, but also move them where he wants them. He's really fun to watch in training camp, especially. I don't know whether it was the defensive scheme or what on game days that didn't have him disrupting or attacking as much, but I think he's going to in this new defense. But no, he's a really well-rounded player. He doesn't put up like huge stats like most nose tackles don't. But he's really disruptive. You'll see that power immediately if you watch him.
Yeah, so I saw you throwing out the words, one of the best in the league. I was like, oh, who's this? Who's
Well,
this?
I can kind of back that up though, because a couple years ago when he received his extension, they made him one of the highest paid interior defenders in the whole NFL. And a lot of people like you guys are probably who is
Right,
that?
right, right,
Uh,
right.
but he's one of those guys where like NFL people, like the coaches and people, they know exactly who he is, but he's not a household name for fans by any
Yeah.
means. And honestly, if I didn't pay attention to the Colts, I probably wouldn't know much about him either. Real
Facts.
quiet
That,
guy.
that's a good thing. That's why you're on here, because we can learn these
Yeah, we need
things.
to
You know what I
know.
mean?
Trying to help. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job at it, and we definitely appreciate you.
Appreciate
Now,
you.
I want to ask you about your draft class right quick,
Hmm.
because number one, you had a couple players that I was interested in, and I know the Cowboys were definitely interested in. Actually, I think I yelled at your team actually at the TV when we did our live draft. I was yelling at the Colts because
Mm,
there was a couple players. Bernard Bernhard Raymond. I liked him at the Senior Bowl. I want to get your opinion of these guys, but
mhm,
Bernhard Raymond was a guy at Central Michigan. I liked him at the tackle position. I thought he was athletic, and I know you guys already have a pretty decent offensive line as is. Kind of where do you think he fits? Tight end Jelani Woods. That's the
Mm,
main tight end Cowboys had their eyes on. They
mhm.
really wanted to pick him in that third round. That's where I feel like they were targeting him, and then you guys scooped him. Maybe what's your plan for him? Because he's all athletic of all get out, but he still has a learning curve. And then your receiver Alec Pierce, because the Cowboys had their eye on him. But obviously, you had your receiver from last season. On the opposite side, Pittman Jr., he's had a pretty good year, and now you're
Mhm.
possibly adding Pierce. Kind of, what's your thoughts on all three of those guys, and what do you think they're going to contribute this season?
Yeah, so Pierce is a pretty good complement to what the Colts want alongside Pittman. Pittman can win downfield, but he's more that classic X. He's going to go over the middle and make the tough catches, things like that. Pierce is a real tall, rangy guy. I think he's about 6'3", 6'4", really fast, and he specializes at contested catches. He's just really good at tracking the ball like that and just kind of winning the 50-50 balls. He's got some learning to do. He'll probably need to be more polished as a route runner. He'll probably contribute pretty quickly on more basic routes and things like that. They did that for Pittman when he was a rookie. They did a lot of short stuff, a lot of slants and things like that. But no, I really like Pierce's long-term outlook. He was, in our pre-draft study, he was one of the receivers that fit the Colts best. Like even including guys that went in round one, Pierce really fit what they wanted. Jelani Woods is just a freak of an
Right.
athlete.
Right.
Um, he, I think he set like the record for relative athletic score, which
yeah, he had a
combines
10 out
like
of 10.
Yeah, your size and your athleticism and all that. He set the record for that. I think, like you said, it's like a perfect 10 out of 10. But he's such a Colts pick. Like they value athleticism and size like so much over a lot of other things. And so if you guys are familiar with Mo Alley Cox, he was a basketball player when the Colts signed him, but he's kind of had to develop into a football player. He's another big guy that can win all those things. But Woods is like the Mo Alley Cox that already knew how to play football, and he's really fast. He's violent with the ball in his hands. I don't know how much he'll contribute right away. I think they have big plans for him because they are infatuated with him.
Hmm.
But I think he'll at least contribute like in the red zone and things like that. But it's hard for rookie tight ends to catch on pretty quickly just because there's just a big learning curve. Uh, but he does have the benefit. I think he got to college at Oklahoma State as a quarterback, and then they were playing Oklahoma one week and had him emulating Mark Andrews in practice. And then ever since then, he's been a tight end. Like I guess
I
he
didn't know that.
dominated
That's
practice.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he
crazy,
dominated
right?
practice and just it's that it was a wrap from there. So really, there just a well there. I feel like such a homer talking about Woods and what his potential is because
He's got a
big,
lot
strong,
of
fast,
potential.
athletic. He checks all the boxes in terms of potential. So there's nothing not to like about him. We'll see how much he can contribute right away, but he'll still be behind Mo Alley Cox and probably Kylan Granson for now. And then you were talking about Bernard Ryman. He right away, I don't know that he'll start. I think they would like him to be the long-term left tackle, but Matt Pryor is going to get the first shake at that.
Mhm.
Former Eagle, of course. Different trade than the Carson Wentz one, but got him last year also.
Yeah, I
Um,
forgot about that one.
yeah, so Ryman right now is probably the backup left tackle. He could feasibly win the spot if something happens with Pryor, but he could also be in play for right guard as well. Those are the two kind of open spots on the Colts line. They're going to have new starters there, so he could factor into that if the guys who are going to get the first shake at starting there just aren't performing well, he could fit in there. But great attitude and work ethic, like that's kind of his bread and butter. Very athletic, very athletic.
Mhm.
The entire draft class had a relative athletic score average of like 9.5 out of 10. Like
Mhm.
Right.
there wasn't anyone they drafted that wasn't a freak, basically. The only knock on Ryman for potentially playing tackle is his arms are just a tick under 33 inches, which is like the threshold that everyone wants, but it's not necessarily a big deal. Like the Colts right tackle, Braden Smith, he was a guard when he was drafted, and they just kind of fell into him starting at right tackle because they had so many injuries. And he has short arms too, and now he's become one of the better right tackles in the league. So it can happen. They know how to work around that. But he's more of a he'll probably contribute more next year. I don't know how big his role will be as a rookie,
Mhm.
but long term, it would be nice for him to be the starting left tackle.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
definitely. Yeah, and more that you talk about this draft class, the more I loved your draft
What
class. I didn't
wasn't
realize
it
you
was a
took
nice
so many.
it was a nice little draft class.
Yeah,
Not just about the players. You took so many guys that the Cowboys wanted. It's like I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
we
it. Thank
won
you
it. Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You guys,
Whatever.
you're helping me out every
Whatever.
left and right. But
Oh
right.
man.
we got probably a question each left. But I do
Hmm.
want to ask you. Look, there's a lot of connections between the Eagles and the Colts. We all know that, right?
Hmm.
Another one is Frank Reich. The Colts, I feel like, have been on the brink of taking that next step. I think that we always look at you guys as a competitive team, as a team that's contending, and just looking for that quarterback. How how much longer is that leash for this coaching staff, for this team? Like how much, what is the next step if you guys don't make the playoffs? You know what I'm saying? Like what
Hmm.
is the thought process behind all this?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at with the picking up where Philip Rivers left off thing is number one, what happened last year is unacceptable. Missing the playoffs will be an enormous deal if it happens again. I mean, context is everything. We don't know what's going to happen. Like if Matt Ryan goes down and the season gets derailed, that's kind of understandable. But missing the playoffs, I don't think will be tolerated. And I don't. I would think people would be on the hot seat for that. I can't say what's the threshold to get someone fired. But Jim Irsay has just the utmost trust in Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. But the truth is, as much as those guys seem to do the right things and they've kind of been dealt odd hands throughout their times here, there has to be results. They have to win the division, which they haven't done yet. They've made the playoffs a couple times, but they got to get back and make progress. Like getting to the playoffs every now and then is fine, but like that's not like Jim Irsay loves the Peyton Manning era and the early Andrew Luck era. He brings those guys up in those eras every single time you talk to every time he talks to the media. He very much loves the history of the Colts, even the recent history. So for the Colts to be treading water for this long is just unbearable to him. And at some point, something's got to give. Not only do they have to start getting back to the playoffs on a more regular basis, but they have to start being a contender in the AFC. They have it's Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, teams like that. The Colts have to be in that conversation. Like that's what the next step is. Sure, they didn't make the playoffs last year, but that's not who they feel they are. They feel they should be a contender. So they have to make the playoffs this season. And not only that, but they probably have to win a game too. Otherwise, there's going to be some heat, I think.
Yeah,
Man,
sure. Well, I would end mine with this. When I look at the Colts, I know what I would look at as a fan and maybe as a team. You're gonna have a veteran quarterback in Matt Ryan. Dallas has seen that, obviously with playing against Atlanta. Banging running back in Jonathan Taylor, up and comer, one of the who's who. And Darius Leonard, Buckner, as you spoke about. And now you have Gilmore. We've seen him. So Dallas, I would say, from a fan point of view, we know what to look at from the Colts. But I want to know, as a Colts person, what do you look at as far as you're matching up with the Cowboys? What would you say you would be looking at from a perspective of how to beat the Cowboys and how you would win that game? What do you think are some matchups? Who would you like? Hey, this guy kind of scares me, or that kind of thing. Give me your kind of breakdown of the Cowboys and what do you think how the matchup would be?
Yeah, so I first look at the offense with the Cowboys just because there's still a lot of firepower there. I think the Colts linebackers would have to be on top of their game. Zeke, hasn't always been at his best lately, but to me, he's still a very dangerous running back. Tony Pollard is very dangerous, really explosive player there. So you have to make sure your linebackers are on their P's and Q's, both against the run and, making sure they're covering the flats when those guys go out to catch passes. And the tight end, Dalton Schultz, if he's around, of course, the linebackers and safeties have to be in charge of that as well. So the Colts would have to get pressure, and their linebackers have to be there to make sure everything stays in front of them. Otherwise, they could be in a world of hurt. I really like the fact that Stephon Gilmore is there now to help with CeeDee Lamb. That's definitely something that's a big boost because I do like the Colts' other corners, but having a true top corner against a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who the Colts were in love with coming into the draft, as far as I know, that's a big boost. As far as defensively, everything kind of starts with Jonathan Taylor. Like that's what you want most game plans in each week to start with is just see what Jonathan Taylor is going to be able to do. But once you establish that run a little bit, capitalize on the play action. That's a big Frank Reich staple. When his offense is working well, the play action is really humming. So, set up the run with Jonathan Taylor because everyone knows that's coming eventually. But try to take advantage, with a Paris Campbell or an Alec Pierce, someone who can stretch the field like that. Kylan Granson could be big in that matchup. He's their tight end too, but he's more of their yards after catch tight end, maybe going up the seam a little bit, taking advantage of the soft spots in the Cowboys defense. That would probably be how I would attack them.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
you guys gonna beat him. I got you guys by
You
40.
ain't beating us. I'm sorry. I like Jake.
It's gonna
I
be
like Jake.
beautiful.
I
It's
like
gonna,
Jake.
I love Jake. I love the
But
Colts too. I
I'm
can't
not
wait till
giving
they
them
play
that.
y'all.
I'm not giving them that dub. But I'm definitely gonna get. Did I give them that dub against y'all?
I don't think so.
Oh,
Yeah, against us, I think you did. You gave everybody a dub
Oh,
against us.
I think
nah,
it was
not
It
20,
really.
23-0 last time. Like
Ah,
the
yeah,
Cowboys
see,
hadn't been blanked in like 20 years leading
yeah,
up
I
to
mean,
then.
see, I was trying to get you off the air before you got to that. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember we had that nice win streak in 2018 and we were humming.
Yeah.
But I'll be very honest with you, Jake, when that game came up, because when we played you before, when you had the Andrew Luck
Uh-huh.
game, I was real confident. I felt like we were going to beat you that game. I felt like it was going to be
Mhm.
that type of game. But when we had that win streak, I promise you, I was talking to my peoples and I was like, I don't like this game. I don't like this game. I do not feel good about this game. We got a long win streak. We going to Colts. Colts just be playing us a certain kind of way, and I just don't feel good. And when I saw Marlon Mack running early like that, I said, "Yep, here it is. This is that game." You
That's
know
how
what I'm
I felt
saying?
about the Cowboys, though. The Colts historically just never won those games against like other teams like the Cowboys that were competitive and like way more often good than they were bad, and it just looked like a bad matchup to me. I did not expect that game to turn out how it did. I love the Darius Leonard and Leighton Vander Esch back and forth in that though. That was good.
Yeah, that was like I said,
Yeah.
that was good, and I like the Colts. Like I said, it's kind of like when me and Joe talked about with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I never like hate the Colts or anything like that.
All right.
Always from afar. I talked to my girl. She was like, "You like the Colts jersey?" I was like, "Oh," she's like, "They're plain." I'm like, "I don't care. It's just somehow they look. I just like that
It's
look.
a
It's like a
classic look.
it's like a
It
classic look.
is.
Like you
Yeah.
never change that look. Don't ever. No, you tell Israel, don't you ever change that look. You know how some teams want to get futuristic and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Never change that look because that's history. Every time I see the Colts, I think of the old Colts,
Uh-huh.
Baltimore
Yeah.
Colts. I just always think of that tradition when I see the Colts.
Hmm.
They're like one of those traditional teams that you just don't mess with.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cowboys too. You know, the uniforms like that and the Steelers and Bears, you gotta keep it classic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. For sure.
Yeah, I think your owner agrees with you from what you were telling
No,
us.
he
It seems
does,
like
yeah.
he enjoys the history, so I
Yeah,
don't think it's going
I don't
anywhere.
think the Colts uniforms are getting futuristic and weird while he's around.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that might be good to hear for some fans, bad to hear for
Yeah.
others. I guess it depends on where you stay. But this was a lot of fun, man. Jake, I appreciate every time that you take the time to come on here. I know
Mhm.
you're a busy man. But is there anything you want to say before we do get out of here?
No, man. You know, Colts training camp gets started. They report next Tuesday. First practice is Wednesday. So I'll be working like a madman. Horseshoehuddle.com and of course the Locked On Colts podcast will have content coming out constantly. So if anyone wants to follow that, it'd be much appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, definitely. You got the stamp. He already knows he's a
Mm-hmm.
part of the family. I always appreciate it, man. But we are about
Yeah.
to get you out of here, Jake. I'm gonna try and read some of these comments that didn't want to come up. But again, I appreciate your time so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, guys.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Have a good
Yeah.
one. All right, so that was my man Jake Arthur, man. It's
I
always
like Jake.
fun. Yeah, it's always fun getting to talk to, other teams, other
Mm-hmm.
perspectives. And
Mm-hmm.
not just that, it's always fun to, talk to Jake because he is about his squad. Like he is
He
about his
knows his
team, and I
team.
love it.
He
Yeah,
knows his
he
team.
just
I
knows
like.
what he's talking about.
Yeah,
But
no,
I
I
want to,
appreciate that right there too.
yeah, I want to, and you do the same thing. Just if you want to read through just a couple names in your chat because our chat just didn't come up at all. But on my side, shout out to Jeremiah Butler, Brandon Katz, Chris Scott. Who else we got in here? Who else we got in here? Life's crazy. We got some other
Yep.
people in here, but shout out to all y'all in the
T
chat. I
Smooth
do see y'all.
TV, Eddie Cruz, Samuel Rowe, my dog Sugar Daddy Williams, my
Big dog.
dog Mel Hayes, Jay Lombardi. Who else we have? I know we have a few more people in here. My dog Carlos Holloway, faithful like always, love him to death. We really just appreciate y'all being making continue to let everybody know when we do these because, like I said, these are fire. It's good for me because I get to learn about the Colts, I get to learn about the
Yeah.
Jaguars, I get to learn about other teams in an easier way. You look at the teams, you look at the players, you study them as far as draft and things of that nature and matchups from afar. But when you actually can get somebody who's a content creator who actually knows what they're talking about, it makes it an easier kind of, okay, I remember when him told me about this dude. So now I'm going to look at him. You get what I'm saying? I remember him saying that they like doing this. So guess what? When we talk about matchups, boom, look for this because this may happen because he knows his team. You feel what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
it's a really great thing that you're doing with this, Joe. And let's keep this moving, man. This is great.
Yeah, you already know, man. You know you're my brother, James. You know you picked the wrong team, but you're my brother, man. And I appreciate everybody
And so did
in
you,
the
because I
chat.
know you like them Cowboys deep down.
No, man, I'm too embedded, bro. I'm too embedded. But I
Okay.
appreciate everybody in the chat, man. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, whatever channel you're on. I know this was a random one because this is extra. We gave him the ice cream on Sunday. We're gonna
Yeah,
come
for
back with
sure.
more ice cream Sunday. This is
For
just the
sure.
cherry on top, that whipped cream. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? We looked out for y'all.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, y'all know what it is, man. That has been James. I have been Joe. And this has been the Best of Enemies. Peace.
Peace.
We're brothers.